In the underground rivers of the Slovenian karst lives a pale, blind, eel-shaped animal that can survive 10 years without food, that lives roughly a century, and that for nearly 200 years was officially documented as the offspring of cave-dwelling dragons. It was given a proper scientific name in 1768. Its biology, in some respects, is still being argued about today. The karst region of what is now Slovenia, Croatia, northeastern Italy and Bosnia and Herzegovina sits on top of a vast network of limestone caves, sinkholes, and subterranean rivers. After heavy rain, water rises through fissures in the rock and floods out at springs in the valleys. Local farmers, going back at least to the medieval period, occasionally found small pale animals with feathery red gills and short legs washed up at these springs. The animals would not have looked like anything they had a name for. The folk explanation, recorded by multiple regional sources from the 16th and 17th centuries, was that these were young dragons, washed out of an underground lair where the adult dragons lived. The legend was specific. The full-grown dragons stayed below. Only the small ones came to the surface, and only when the water forced them. This was the working understanding for several hundred years. The first written description outside the folk legend frame appeared in 1689 in a 4-volume topographical work called Die Ehre des Herzogthums Crain, The Glory of the Duchy of Carniola, by the Slovenian polymath Janez Vajkard Valvasor. Valvasor described the animal carefully. It was about a span long. It was pale, almost flesh-colored, with 3 pairs of red, feathery external gills, 4 short limbs, and no visible eyes. It came up from underground watercourses, particularly after rain. He recorded the local belief that the creatures were dragon offspring, and he transcribed it without endorsing it. He was, by the standards of his century, a careful observer. Valvasor's description circulated. Other naturalists became aware of the animal, but for the next 8 decades, no one classified it formally. There was no agreed name in Latin and no place for it in the emerging Linnean taxonomic system that was reorganizing European biology in the 1750s. The formal scientific description came from an Austrian naturalist named Joseph Nicolaus Laurenti in a Vienna publication of 1768 titled Specimen Medicum Exhibens Synapsin Reptilium. Laurenti gave the animal the scientific name Proteus Anguinus, Proteus, after the Greek shape-shifting sea god, and Anguinus, meaning eel-like. The name held. What Laurenti was working with in 1768 was a few preserved specimens and Valvasor's description. He correctly recognized that this was an amphibian, not a fish and not a reptile, and that it belonged near the salamanders. He could not have known many of the things later biologists would establish about its eyes, about its lifespan, about its life cycle, but the genus and species names he gave have not changed in 257 years. The animal, in English, came to be called the ohm. In Slovenian and Croatian it is the Klovishka ribica or Čovječja ribica, literally, the little human fish, because the color of its skin in dim cave conditions resembles pale human flesh. The ohm grows to between 20 and 30 centimeters. It is permanently aquatic, and it retains its larval external gills throughout its entire adult life, a phenomenon biologists call neoteny, the same trait that defines the Mexican axolotl. Ohms breathe through gills, lungs, and skin in combination. Its eyes form during embryonic development and then regress. By adulthood the eyes are reduced to small, non-functioning structures covered by a layer of skin. The animal is effectively blind. However, its skin and the eye structures themselves remain photosensitive, and laboratory studies have shown that ohms react to light, particularly to specific wavelengths. They do not see images, but they detect light. Their primary senses are chemical and mechanical, smell, taste, lateral line sensitivity to water movement, and an electrosensitivity that has been documented in laboratory work. The skin contains no functional melanin under normal cave conditions, which is why ohms are pinkish-white. if exposed to light over weeks or months. However, the skin produces pigment and the animal turns dark grey or brown. A separate population in southern Slovenia, the so-called black omb Proteus Anguinus parkelge, has functional eyes and dark pigmentation from birth. It was described as a subspecies in 1986. Ombs eat small invertebrates, cave shrimp, small snails, insect larvae that wash in. Their metabolism is extraordinarily slow. Multiple captive feeding studies have documented individual ombs surviving 12 months or more without food. The most cited published account, from the Postojna research aquaria in the 1950s, recorded an animal that ate nothing for over 6 years and remained alive. Field biologists treat the practical figure as an omb can live on the energy of a single substantial meal for years. In 2011, a research group based at the Moulis Subterranean Laboratory in the French Pyrenees, a CNRS facility, published a paper in the journal Biology Letters called Extreme Lifespan of the Omb Proteus Anguinus. The lead author was Janez Vajkard. The lab had been keeping a population of ombs continuously since the 1950s. The paper reported that adult ombs in the colony reached an average age estimate of approximately 6 to 8 years and that the maximum probable lifespan, projected from the survival data, was over 100 years. For an amphibian of its size, this is several times longer than would be predicted by standard metabolic aging models. The paper attracted attention because long-lived vertebrates of small body size are biologically unusual. Most of the well-known vertebrate centenarians, Greenland sharks, bowhead whales, Galapagos tortoises, are large-bodied animals with low metabolic rates per unit mass. The omb is small. Its tissues do not show on the markers that have been measured, the kind of damage repair that mechanistically explains the lifespans of larger long-lived species. The Voituron paper closed with the observation that the omb's longevity is, on current understanding, a challenge for aging mechanisms, a polite scientific way of saying we do not yet know why this animal lives this long. Other research groups in Slovenia, Croatia, and France have continued the work. The 100-year figure is, as of writing, the working upper estimate. It has not been definitively confirmed for any single named individual because the longest monitored animals in captivity are still alive. In late January 2016, a female omb in the public aquarium at Postojna cave in Slovenia laid an egg on the underside of a rock. Then she laid more. By the time the cave biologists noticed and reorganized the exhibit, she had laid 6 to 4 eggs. The cave aquarium installed cameras and a public live stream. Omb reproduction had been observed in laboratory captivity before, but it had never been monitored continuously, in public, with full instrumentation. 23 of the 6 to 4 eggs were fertilized. The first hatchlings emerged about 4 months later, in late May and early June 2016. The cameras recorded the entire incubation. The footage circulated worldwide and was the basis for several scientific updates to what was previously known about Proteus embryology. The Postojna event mattered scientifically because it produced the first continuous video record of the species' development from egg to free-swimming larva. It also gave biologists a precise reproductive interval. The female does not reproduce again for years afterward, which fed back into the lifespan models. Proteus anguinus is listed as vulnerable on the Ehre Red List, with the assessment most recently reaffirmed in 2022. The threats are not predation or competition. The threats are pollution and groundwater change. The karst aquifer system the omb depends on is hydrologically connected to surface farmland, surface industrial discharge, and surface road networks. Pesticide and nitrate runoff that enters a sinkhole appears, eventually, in the water the ombs breathe through their skin. Rising regional temperatures and altered rainfall patterns are changing flow rates in the underground rivers. The animal that survived in this hydrological system for between 5 and 20 million years, long enough that whatever surface ancestor it had has not been identified with certainty, is now being measured against changes in surface water chemistry that have happened in roughly the last 70 A pale, blind, eel-shaped amphibian was washed up from the Slovenian karst after centuries of rainstorms, was recorded in legend as dragon spawn, was described carefully by Valvasor in 1689, was given the name Proteus Anguinus by Laurenti in 1768, and was found by 21st century biologists to live a century, eat once a decade, and reproduce only every several years. It is, as a matter of strict species record, the same animal Slovenian farmers were finding at flooded springs 400 years ago. The dragon legend lasted until somebody named it.